had a conversation with my dad about a year ago where I asked him, if money didn't matter, what would you do? What would you like to do with the rest of your life if money did not matter? That's the question that the story I'm going to tell you today is going to explore. Little did I know that I would ask myself that question less than 6 months later, when my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer and my brother bought a plane ticket to go see him. And I thought to myself, this might be the last time that we get to see him. And at the same time, I remembered that me and my brother and a friend of ours, we had buried a time capsule in our childhood home, and we still hadn't gotten to dig it up. This was, 16 years ago. I sort of pitched the two of them, what if we all go down there and we go and we try to find the time capsule? And our friend, when I asked him, he said, well, I don't have the money. And then I started to ask myself, fuck, I don't want money to be the reason that we don't do this. But I also, the last 3 months of my life had been some of the most expensive months in my life. And I was about to quit my job. I didn't have that much money saved up. And so I had to ask myself that same question. If money didn't matter, what would I want to do right now? And immediately it was obvious, right? So I asked my friend that. And of course, he's like, absolutely. I am 100% in if that's the case. And so we decided to do it. And that's the story that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And it was one of the most memorable experiences of my life. So I was the first one to fly down. This was in Mexico. My dad's family is all from Mexico. And so we had what's called a posada, which is just like a Christmas party. And man, it was all going really well, and we were all having fun and laughing. And then right before we all sat down to eat, I was standing in line serving food on my plate. And someone made a comment about the napkins or the hats we were wearing. And they said 2022. And somebody said haha, next year we'll have to put 2023 since we messed up this year. And I looked at my dad, man, and I could see the pain in his face. I genuinely felt like my dad had heard the comment about next year's party we'll have to do this, and he had thought to himself, I don't know if I'm gonna be here next year. Right? And he had told me prior to this that, if his cancer went untreated, the doctors had given him 6 months. And so, there was a lot of truth to that. But man, I just saw my dad's face and I fucking crumbled, man. And I had to walk away, go to my bedroom, and I just broke down, man. And I cried and I cried. And then I tried to go back outside for a bit, but it was overwhelming and it was just too much. It was too painful to be at this fucking last supper with my dad and his family, and to just, it was beautiful, man. It was amazing, but it crushed me at the same time. So that was the first night. And so a couple days later, we made our way to our childhood home, which is no longer our home, but it's, we buried the time capsule on the beach. We get to the beach, and so we started digging, man, and we started digging, and we didn't remember where we had buried it, but my brother was sure that it was in this general area, so we started digging there. A couple hours in, the owner of the house, her children and grandchildren showed up, and these two puppies ran out, and they started kind of chasing everybody around, and it was all of a sudden, it was like a community effort, right? We were still the only ones digging, but there was now kids asking us, what are you doing? What's in the treasure? And just an experience that I didn't expect it to be. About maybe 5-6 hours in, we started to realize we're not going to find it today. The sun's going down. And it was my brother and our friend who decided and who pitched what if we come back tomorrow? And at that point I was man, I was ready to give up. I was just this has been enough for me. This was worth it. So I was just happy that they had gotten so much out of day one that they wanted to come back for day two. So we come back, day two, we got a fucking Domino's pizza, Coca-Cola, all this shit. This time we didn't have as much time. By hour 4, we still hadn't found it. But I remember my brother at one point turned to us and he said, man, it feels so good to do something with no promise of there being a result. That was one of the highlights of that dig for me, because in my family and for our friend too, you know, we have this tendency to really focus or get our self-worth from our output. So for the 3 of us to go down there and to commit to this fucking outlandish idea that we're gonna find a time capsule that we buried probably 3 feet deep in the sand 16 years ago, the commitment was to me what the real treasure of the experience was. But so about hour 4, I kind of just picked a fucking random spot and I started digging, right? Because at this point I was like, fuck, dude, I actually do want to find it. I actually want to find the time capsule. And so I started digging there by myself. I was just like in a trance, right? Like I was like, I'm gonna fuck my body up as much as I need to, but I'm gonna find this time capsule. And there was something about, you know, so much physical effort that it kind of brought me close to my emotions, and I started to realize and I had to accept that we weren't gonna find it. And man, it was sad. Not so much because we didn't find the time capsule, but because, you know, here was this home that we grew up in. 16 years later, here we are again, doing exactly the kind of thing that we would have done when we were kids. And it just touched me, like the fact that we haven't strayed too far from our innocence and from this, you know, from dreaming and from believing in things that, you know, to other people maybe sound a little bit crazy. And so I just stopped at one point and I started to tear up and I cried a little bit, thinking about this home and how, you know, in this city that has changed so much, a decade and a half later, my childhood home looked exactly the way that we left it. So in a way, it was like this beautiful metaphor, like we didn't find the literal time capsule that we buried, but the house in and of itself was like a time capsule. And that at that point, that was when the trip kind of like took a turn, and it was the point in like the sleepover when you realize that, you know, you're over halfway through and you're gonna go home soon. And then on the last night, after our friend had left, it was just me and my brother left. Everybody was in my dad's room, and I just kind of went out to the beachfront and I sat there looking at the ocean. And I just started to fucking weep for like an hour. Here I'd been in my fucking apartment in Austin, Texas, questioning whether this experience was gonna be worth it for a couple $100. And I would have missed out on these 10 days, these magical 10 days. And at the same time, it was like everything that allows me to come down here and visit him and spend time in this house, like it all depends on him doing the things that are required for this to stay afloat. And I just started to think, you know, this could be the last time that I'm here. This could be the last time that I'm here with him. And it just got me, man. I was just hit by a wave of grief. In a way, it felt like I was saying goodbye. And even if I did get to come back, and even if my dad was still alive, you know, he might not be the same person anymore. But so I just sat there by the water and I reflected on the whole trip. I really sort of appreciated that I had made this decision for myself to come down here. I was grateful for everything that my dad has done for me, and everything that this place has done for me and that this place has given me, right? There's a ton of fucking trauma. There's a ton of shit that was awful, right? And in that moment, it was like the barrier between me and my dad, that didn't exist anymore. I was only able to feel love for him and his love for me. So I guess what I learned was that so often in life, I will find excuses to do shit that I probably shouldn't, and I will find excuses to not do things that could completely change my life. I'm actually in this position right now. My dad's actually gonna go through treatment for 6 weeks in Mexico City. And I told him, you know, I wanna go see you one of those 6 weeks. And man, as soon as I told him that, I started to, you know, be like, oh, but taxes are coming up and I'm gonna have to pay some money. And man, I just went on that trip and I still haven't kind of recovered financially, and there's things I want to buy and there's experiences I want to have. And it's like, you know, even after I've had this experience, that voice is still there. If money didn't matter, would I do it or not? Do I want to do it or not, right? Because at the end of the day, I think that's all that matters, right? And this isn't about being irresponsible with your money, but it's about like, how much are you lying to yourself and how much of it is true, right? If you don't have the money, then you don't have the money. But if you have the money and you're just like creating excuses for yourself, then I don't know, maybe this question will serve you the way that it did me. So yeah, so that was my experience. I hope that it helps you. I hope that it touches you in some way. And if there's anything that you're currently going through or anything that you're sort of curious to try or anything you're reflecting on, leave a comment below, and maybe my next video will be about that if I have an experience with it. All right, thank you for watching.